Hello everyone, welcome to Krakow, welcome to the World War II Krakow tour. Today we are exploring the Kraków Ghetto area and the area of the Schindler Factory. So let's not waste our time, let me flip the camera and let's get going. And we are starting this tour from the banks of the Wisla River, one of the major symbols of Polish statehood. In the first half of the 1900s, it served as the borderline between the Krakow's Old Town, which is in that direction, over there. In fact, at the end of this avenue, you can see the roof of the St. Mary's Basilica located in the heart of Krakow's Old Town. And this neighborhood in front of us in the early 1900s was known as the Krakow's Jewish quarter, Kazimierz. So in the first half of the 1900s, the Wisla River served as the border between the Old Town and Kazimierz, which are on the right bank of the river, and Podgorze, the recently included into the Krakow proper working class neighborhood, which during the time of the Second World War, between 1941 and 1943, became the Kraków Ghetto. So, but let's go back to 1939, the summer of 1939. The Poles knew that the war with the Nazi Germany would eventually start. They were just not sure about the date. On September 1st, 1939, the Nazi Germany invaded Poland, and 6 days later, on September 6th, they were in Krakow. And Krakow's occupation started on September 6th, 1939. The Nazi army was followed by quite a lot of German businessmen, including Oskar Schindler, who was in Krakow already the following day, on September 7th, 1939. He was looking for commercial opportunities in this beautiful town. From the start, the Nazis had that plan to turn Krakow into the capital of the occupied by the Nazis Poland, mainly the central and eastern and southeastern Poland, which eventually became the area known as the Government General. So Krakow was to become its capital. So who was Oskar Schindler? He was born in 1908 in the region of, at that time, Czechoslovakia. Now it's known as Czechia. In the region known as Sudetenland. He graduated from college, although according to his biographers, he spent more time partying, drinking, and flirting with the girls during his college time than studying. Having graduated from college, he joined the agricultural machinery company, which was founded by his father. But shortly afterwards, he quit and became involved in sales and marketing, working for different companies. He traveled a lot. He married at the age of around 20. And shortly afterwards, he moved to a town located on the border with Poland together with his wife. Around 1937, he became a member of the German party in Czechia. And around that time, he became a military spy for the Nazi military intelligence known as Abwehr. So while being involved in sales and marketing and traveling around Czechia and Poland, he started gathering all sorts of important information for the Nazi military intelligence known as Abwehr. While he was doing all that and building his career, 3 Jewish entrepreneurs living here in Krakow decided to make an investment. And we're now in 1937. And you are now looking in the direction of the area of Krakow, which at that time was the city's industrial zone. It was part of Krakow proper, but an industrial area packed full of different enterprises. And those 3 Jewish businessmen decided to establish the Pans and Pots company, which they advertised as the first in southern Poland Enamel ware company, producing pots and pans. So the company was open. Shortly afterwards, they were joined by the 4th Jewish entrepreneur who was living in Krakow at the time. His name was Adam Banker, and later he would become a very important man for the Schindler Factory enterprise. But the business was not going well. They had a small store where they sold their goods, but the business was not going well. And in July 1939, they filed for bankruptcy. And on September 1st, 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland. And 7 days later, Oskar Schindler arrived in Krakow, looking for business opportunities. And we're now approaching the road right there, which during the time of the Krakow Ghetto served as the ghetto's border on this side. And the wall was built along this road. So Oskar Schindler arrived in Krakow and opened the office of his company on one of the main city's avenues in Kazimierz. And around that time, he met Abraham Banker, who was one of those 4 businessmen who founded the Pans and Pots company. Abraham Banker introduced him to his accountant, Izaak Stern, and they told Oskar Schindler the story of their enterprise. And Oskar Schindler sensed business opportunities in it. So the ghetto wall was right here. We're now inside the ghetto, and you are looking at one of the old buildings, which was here during the ghetto time. And now let's continue with the story of Oskar Schindler and his enterprise while walking around the ghetto area. And we are walking towards the main square of the ghetto. So in November 1939, Schindler received all of the required paperwork, which made him the new owner of the Enamel ware company. At first, his factory was quite small. It consisted of just 1 floor. And in January 1940, when it was open, it had around 100 Polish employees and 7 Jews, including those 4 Jewish businessmen who launched that company in 1937. And while Oskar Schindler was involved in what we can call in modern language business development, sales and marketing, those 4 Jewish businessmen were responsible for the company's operations and production. And we're now on the main square of the Kraków Ghetto. In March 1941, all of the Jews who had been officially living in Krakow at the time had to resettle to the ghetto. The ghetto borders were sealed on March 21st, 1941. And while being in the ghetto, they had to be forced laborers. And that was actually a life-saving ticket, because as long as they worked, they were not deported. Some of them were used as forced laborers, doing different jobs in the city, including in the Royal Wawel, which became the headquarters of the Gestapo, and basically the head of the Gestapo was living there, and the Nazi Governor General of this region. Some were involved in different job assignments in the city center and in Kazimierz. More worked in the industrial area, which is in that direction, including at the Schindler's factory. And very quickly, Oskar Schindler, with the help of his accountant, Izaak Stern, and actually his brother, realized that it would be for the company's benefit to employ Jewish forced laborers and not Polish forced laborers, because it was cheaper. So it was from the square that the forced laborers were marched from the ghetto to their job assignments in the city center, which is in that direction where we started our walk, and to that industrial zone, including to the Schindler's factory. This was the police guard booth at the time, which was at that spot. And over there was one of the few ghetto gates. And this memorial, which consists of 68 chairs, was placed here in 2004. And quite a lot of houses, which you see on the square right now, survived the wartime, and they were here during the time of the ghetto. And they are the silent witnesses to the events which had been happening on the square from the ghetto's founding. And on the square, thousands of Jews were gathered before they were marched to the job assignments. They were marched from here to the Plaszow concentration camps and to the train station during the mass deportations. During the last period of the ghetto's existence, they would gather here to get their job assignments. And during the ghetto's closing or liquidation, the square witnessed some of the most tragic events. And from here, we're heading to the industrial area, and to the Schindler's factory. Here we are in the area of the Schindler's factory. In fact, you are looking at this gray 3-story building, which these days is known as the Schindler's factory. So in January 1940, Oskar Schindler opened his factory here with slightly over 100 Polish employees and 7 Jewish employees. And at that time, the factory's building looked very different. It had a store, which was around the corner. And at first, it went on making pots and pans. Later on, when Schindler realized that it would be much more profitable to make shell casings, it focused on making shell casings. And then he realized that employing Jewish forced laborers was much more beneficial. And the number of the Jewish forced laborers employed here started growing dramatically. And in 1944, there were 1,100 Jewish forced laborers working here, including a few children and elderly people who were not supposed to be used as forced laborers by the Nazi laws. However, Schindler made fake documents and used them as forced laborers, saving their lives. These days, the tour of the Schindler's factory is a fascinating yet very sobering journey into the World War II Krakow, into its general and Jewish wartime history. The front entrance is decorated with a few memorial signs, each with its different story. And the photographs of the so-called Schindler's Jews. Those 1,100 Schindler's Jews who survived the Second World War thanks to all of his efforts. And during our in-person tour, we talked quite a lot about their personal stories. Behind each of these photographs, there is a very interesting story of living here during the Second World War, of surviving the war, and the story of the life continued after the war. And here is the photograph of the only living in Krakow Holocaust survivor from the Schindler's List, Nusa Horowitz, and she has quite a story to tell. During our in-person World War II Krakow tour, we walk around the ghetto area, its less known parts, and we recreate how life was there during the ghetto time. We talk about the ghetto residents whose names are these days commemorated on the heritage signs. A lot of these buildings, including that one behind me, were here during the wartime, and they have quite a lot of fascinating yet rather sobering stories to tell. We show black and white photographs of the areas of the ghetto, the way they looked during the World War II and the way they look now, so that you can compare. So join us to explore Kraków Ghetto and the World War II Krakow.